Hey there, all you beautiful souls. I hope your day has been absolutely fantastic. It's a pleasure to have you back for yet another exciting episode of What If Naruto Was Sent to the Fairy Tale Universe. Don't forget to pay a visit to the author of this captivating fanfiction and show them some love. You'll find the link waiting for you down in the description. If this what if is sparking your curiosity, drop a comment down below and share your thoughts. And while you're at it, don't miss out on exploring the plethora of other intriguing what ifs available on this fairy channel. Alright, let's not keep you waiting any longer, let's dive right into this thought-provoking video. There was no hesitation at all. No wisecracking remarks or even mocking insults. Zancro's free arm rose, igniting with searing black flames. His eyes burned with a singular, unrelenting, all-consuming purpose. Naruto's death. Scrambling in the vice grip of his opponent, Naruto's concussion-addled mind defaulted to basic shinobi instinct. Survival at any cost. The blonde took a leaflet from Orochimaru's book as he tried to contort himself past the incoming fist. While unfortunately nowhere near as flexible as the snake Sanin, he was still able to dodge the majority of the punch, and only caught a light burn to his side. Using the momentum of the swing to carry his weight back and through like a pendulum, Naruto hooked his legs up and over Zancro's shoulder, as hands grabbed tight the arm holding his throat. Locking his calf against the fire mage's throat, Naruto reared back into an armbar and pulled with all his might. A sharp crack split the air as Zancro's joint dislocated. The crushing grip on Naruto's throat loosened instantly. He hit the ground with a desperate gasp, rolling out of reach as Zancro let out a furious pain-laced scream. Desperately scrambling away, only one thought rattled around the blonde's mind: escape. He heard the mage behind him growl furiously, followed by the unpleasant crunch of a joint being forced back into place. Stumbling as he pushed himself up, Naruto awkwardly crossed his fingers and called out, "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, Shadow Clone Technique." Immediately a dozen equally disorientated ninja appeared around him, all fighting to run away from the frenzied man behind them. A roar suddenly sounded, and Naruto's shadow stretched out before him. Two clones acted on instinct, grabbing the original and hurling him into the dense foliage, just as a wave of fire engulfed the area. The memories of his clones being vaporized flooded Naruto's mind, but he pushed them aside. He couldn't afford to dwell on it now. He needed time to heal and time to think. Ducking behind a massive tree, Naruto pressed himself against the rough bark, making himself as small as possible. His chest heaved as he gulped down air, each breath sharp and painful. He winced as his burns and bruises began to heal, the fractures in his ribs and arms knitting themselves back together with unnatural speed. Despite the speed of his healing factor, Naruto knew he had almost no time to rest. The hurried stomping behind him confirmed that Zancro was hot on his trail. The air grew thick with the acrid smell of smoke, as tree after tree erupted into flames, the mage's black fire consuming everything in its path. Zancro's rage was palpable, his indiscriminate destruction a clear sign that he wouldn't stop until Naruto was dead. Naruto pressed himself deeper into the tree, silently thanking the Kyuubi's regeneration for keeping him alive. His breathing slowed as his mind began to clear, the fog of pain and panic lifting just enough for him to think. He was still hurting, but as his body healed, the beginnings of a plan started to take shape. "I just need to distract him," Naruto thought, his eyes narrowing in determination. "Buy myself enough time to turn this around." Grabbing a small stone, Naruto channeled chakra into his thumb and leaned slightly out from behind his cover. With a sharp flick, he sent the pebble hurtling across the clearing. It struck a tree with a loud crack, shattering on impact. Almost instantly, the tree erupted into flames as Zancro's black fire consumed it, the mage himself stalking into view with a predatory glare. Seizing the moment of distraction, Naruto dropped low to the ground and moved quickly, zigzagging through the underbrush to avoid giving away his position. His heart pounded as he made his way toward the center of the island, his eyes scanning for the best path forward. He leapt onto a series of large boulders, using them to ascend higher toward the towering tenru tree. The rough stone scraped against his palms, but he didn't dare slow down. Finally, he spotted a narrow crack in the rock face just wide enough for him to squeeze into. He wedged himself inside, pressing his back against the cool stone as he tried to steady his breathing. Zancro's similar to a dragon slayer, he reminded himself as his pulse slowed. "If he's anything like the ones I've met, his sense of smell is sharp enough to track me down in no time." Thankfully, that little trait was exactly what Naruto was banking on. As he waited, the sounds of battle from across the island reached his ears. Though he couldn't see anything from his hiding spot, the distant explosions, cries, and general chaos were clear indicators that the rest of the guild was locked in combat. The rapid pattering of grunt feet occasionally passed by his location, but none of them seemed to realize the danger they were running past. Naruto closed his eyes, taking a few more calming breaths through his nose, and let his senses expand to reveal the enormity of the attack unfolding around him. The island was teeming with grunts, nearly uncountable in number, all of them running amok and causing mayhem wherever they went. They were like a swarm of ants, overwhelming and relentless. But amidst the chaos, brighter signatures stood out. These were the fairy tale members, each locked in fierce battles with their opponents. The clashes seemed drawn out, with plenty of shouting and banter exchanged between the mages. If only Zancro was interested in talking, Naruto muttered under his breath, a wry smile tugging at his lips. To be fair, he understood the mage's fury. Naruto had nearly killed him the last time they met, and the burning desire for revenge was to be expected from someone as unhinged as Zancro. Focusing his Sagan's senses, Naruto sought out the scarred mage. In his mind's eye, he watched as Zancro frantically hunted down his former path, nose lifted high as he tracked the teen's scent. The mage's movements were erratic, his rage palpable even from a distance. Good. Just wait, you ugly bastard, Naruto thought, a smirk forming. I've got a surprise for you in a second. For now, Naruto didn't need to do anything. He simply waited and watched, his senses attuned to Zancro's every move. In a matter of moments, the mage would hop over that boulder and yes. The ground beneath Zancro gave way as he plummeted into a deep pit, one of the traps Naruto had originally designed to thwart the S-rank test takers. But what happened next was a special edition just for Zancro. Several shadow clones, positioned near the pit, dug in their heels and pushed with all their might. The massive boulder teetered for a moment before toppling over, crashing into the hole with a thunderous boom. Even from his hiding spot, Naruto felt the ground tremble under the impact. Zancro wasn't killed, the man was far too sturdy for that, but the boulder pinned him to the bottom of the pit, buying Naruto a precious moment to regroup and catch his breath. Nodding in satisfaction, Naruto turned his attention to working out how to find Mirajane and Lisana, among the mayhem currently running wild across the island. Now, where did those sisters get to? Almost as if answering his question, the ring on his finger began to vibrate. Naruto twitched at the sudden sensation, looking down at it with a grin. "Mirajane, you're a genius," he exclaimed, his voice filled with relief. Funneling a small amount of chakra into the ring, Naruto closed his eyes and focused on balancing his input, with a buzzing response from Mirajane's end. "Mirajane needed less from me last time," he reminded himself. "So I'll just trickle a tiny amount in for now." Carefully, he allowed a steady seep of energy to flow into the ring, trusting Mirajane to balance her end against his output. He knew his control wasn't perfect, but he had faith in her ability to compensate. The sharp sting of the ring soon signaled that harmonic resonance had been achieved. Biting his thumb, Naruto swiped the blood over the ring, and quickly formed the necessary hand seals. Kuchi's no jutsu, summoning technique. Dumping himself on the chest, Naruto braced for the familiar sensation of the ground dropping out from under him. This time, however, the transition was much smoother. His hand curled around delicate fingers, and his feet hit the ground with significantly less force than before. Looks like Gamma was right about the concentration thing, he thought, a small smile tugging at his lips. That was way better. "Naruto, you came." Mirajane's voice rang out, filled with relief and joy. Before he could respond, she abruptly wrapped her arms around him, squeezing him tightly. "What on earth happened? I was so worried when that man charged at you and punched you away like that. I've never seen anyone get hit that hard before. Are you okay?" She pulled back slightly, her hands gripping his shoulders as she looked him over with worry. Her eyes scanned his weary, bloodied form, taking in the bruises and burns that marred his skin. Naruto chuckled softly, pulling her back into a hug and resting his chin on her head. "That was Zancro," he explained, his voice calm but tinged with pain. "He's got a grudge from our last match. Let's just leave it at that. I'm pretty sore, but I'm doing okay, all things considered." Feeling her squeeze him again, Naruto glanced up and noticed Lisana standing a few steps behind them. Her eyes kept flicking toward the pair before darting away, her expression a mix of relief and awkwardness. Not wanting to make her uncomfortable, Naruto looked over Mira's head with a warm smile. "And how are you guys doing? I threw you both pretty hard to get you out of danger. You didn't land too badly, did you?" Lisana shook her head, her expression a mix of relief and lingering fear. "No, we're both fine," she said. "Mirajane landed in a patch of grass, and I landed in the creek. We were pretty lucky, all things considered." She glanced at Naruto, her voice dropping slightly. "That guy Zancro or whatever, he didn't even glance at us. He just raced off after you. I was really scared he was going to turn on us for a moment there." Naruto frowned, his stomach twisting at the thought. He didn't even want to imagine what that would have looked like. "Well, don't worry about him for now," he said, forcing a reassuring tone. "I've got him stuck in a hole under a boulder for the moment. Let's use the time to get out of here." Mirajane, still clinging to him, muttered something into his chest before pulling back slightly. Her voice was soft but firm. Please, don't scare me like that again, okay? Stick with me and Lisana. We need to get to the beach and regroup. Naruto's eyes softened at the quiver in her voice, and he smiled gently. Yeah, sure thing, Mirajane, he said, his tone warm. Leaning down, he gave her a soft kiss, unable to suppress a smirk as he heard Lisana squawk indignantly. Geez, guys, get a room. She exclaimed, her cheeks flushing slightly. What Naruto didn't expect, however, was another voice hesitantly calling out, Naruto. Breaking the kiss, Naruto looked up in shock to see Ultear standing a short distance away. Her eyes were wide, a mix of shock and something else. Possibly betrayal. Flickering across her face. Dressed in a tight-fitting beige bodysuit, she held up a hand toward the pair, her movements hesitant. Naruto's instincts kicked in immediately. He pulled Mirajane behind him, his eyes narrowing as he faced Ultear. What are you doing here, Ultear? He asked, his voice sharp. Not that I'm unhappy to see you, since I can now drag you back to the council. Ultear ignored his question, her gaze fixed on Mirajane. Who's that? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Naruto raised an eyebrow, his protective stance unwavering. This is Mirajane, he said, his tone firm. What's it to you? Ultear froze, her expression shifting through a whirlwind of emotions like shock, hurt, anger, and sorrow, before finally settling on a weak forced smile. So, she's a friend of yours? She asked, her voice trembling slightly. Naruto's eyes narrowed further, sensing something was off. He pulled Mirajane back behind him again, his voice hardening. My girlfriend, yes. What does that matter to you? In Ultear's mind, it meant nothing. And yet, everything. I've given up on him, she repeated to herself, her thoughts a chaotic storm. I've given up on him in this life. But no matter how hard she tried to rationalize it, the sight of Naruto holding another woman in his arms overwhelmed her. Her fingers twitched as emotions raged within her, her heart and soul at war with her mind. Gritting her teeth, Ultear clenched her fists, refusing to let any tears slip from her eyes. Her posture shifted, her body tensing as her emotions threatened to spill over. Seeing the dangerous change in her demeanor, Naruto began pushing Mirajane back. Mirajane, Lisana-chan, we need to go. Now. The sisters exchanged a glance, unsure of what was happening, but sensing the tension in the air. The piercing gaze Ultear locked onto Naruto was enough to tell them that running was the best option. But instead of fleeing, Mirajane and Lisana shared a glance before stepping forward, their expressions defiant. We're only running if you run with us, Mirajane said firmly, her voice steady despite the uncertainty in her eyes. We're not leaving you here by yourself. I thought as much, Naruto muttered under his breath, a mix of frustration and admiration in his tone. He couldn't blame them, if he were in their shoes, there was no way he'd run from this either. A sudden burst of heat from behind made Naruto's blood run cold. He turned slightly, his heart sinking as he realized they'd run out of time. Ultear sighed, her voice dripping like honey. Ah, Zancro, there you are. What have you been doing? Did you hear any of that? Naruto glanced over his shoulder, his stomach twisting as he spotted the mage. He was dusty and grazed but otherwise unharmed, his piercing red eyes locked onto Naruto with a hatred so intense it felt like it could ignite the air. Enough, Zancro growled, his voice ragged and broken, as if speaking itself was painful. Enough to hear that bitch by his side is my ticket to his pain. Naruto's eyes widened and he spun around, positioning himself between Zancro and Mirajane. Okay, we're leaving. Right now. Hold on, he said urgently. Both sisters grabbed onto his arms as he crouched, ready to leap. Zancro snarled and lunged forward, but he was a fraction too late. The trio rocketed into the sky just as flames erupted below them, licking at their heels. Naruto pushed higher and higher, the heat fading as they ascended out of reach. He could feel the girls trembling against him, their grips tight and unyielding. Pulling them closer, he finally relaxed once they reached a safe altitude. Sorry about that, Naruto said, glancing down at his passengers. Things were about to get really dangerous if we didn't move. Mirajane shook her head, her expression forgiving, while Lisana asked cautiously, Naruto, who was that woman? Sighing, Naruto looked down at the forest below. That was Ultear. She was a former member of the Magic Council, or so we thought. Turns out she was a mole for Grimmerheart. I tracked her to her guild a while ago. She's complicated. Under all that hate, there's something else. She's yearning for a chance to redo her life. We spent some time together before she escaped prison. I promised to bring her back to face the Magic Council eventually. I just didn't expect her to show up here. He smirked faintly. Guess she wanted to save me the trouble of hunting her down. Lisana raised an unamused eyebrow. What it looked like was she wanted to tear Mirajane apart. Care to explain that part? If you can explain that, Naruto, I'd appreciate it too. Mirajane added hesitantly. Naruto clicked his tongue, his brow furrowing in uncertainty. To be honest, I really don't know. She had this weird way of looking at the world. Like this time didn't matter or something, yet in reality she seemed to react excessively to things. It's been a while since I tried to make sense of it. He clenched his eyes shut, trying to dredge up the memory. It was like she didn't care what happened in this timeline because... And this is where it gets foggy. I think she wanted Zareth, that old dead mage, to rewind time for her. Or something like that. She was looking for a dover, I think. You know, for how long it's been since we spoke, you remember a fair bit. Naruto whipped around in surprise, his eyes widening as he saw Ultear floating behind them, seated on a glowing crystal ball. Her dark smile sent a chill down his spine, and her voice dripped with condescension as she pointed at them. When Zareth rewinds time, we can try all this again properly, I might add. Need I remind you that Zareth is dead, Ultear? Naruto bit out through clenched teeth, his arms tightening around Mirajane and Lisana. Give up on this fantasy of rewinding time. Ultear giggled, her expression smug, as if she knew a secret they didn't. Oh, you think he was dead, wouldn't you? Though. Her eyes narrowed as she glared at the way Naruto was holding the girls. I feel the desire to break this little party up. Call it a woman's intuition. Before Naruto could respond, a faint shimmer in the air caught the corner of his eye. His instinct screamed at him, but with both Mirajane and Lisana in his arms, his movements were restricted. He twisted his body, trying to shield the sisters, but Ultear's crystal ball was already in motion, hurtling straight toward Mirajane. Naruto's heart lurched. Without hesitation, he shifted his weight, pulling Mirajane closer and angling his body to intercept the attack. The crystal ball struck him square in the back of the head, the impact amplified by the sheer weight and speed of the projectile. Even with Naruto's durability, he dropped like a puppet with its strings cut. Naruto. Mirajane and Lisana screamed in unison, their voices filled with shock and fear. They flailed, trying to grab him, but gravity had already taken hold. Ultear swooped in, grabbing Naruto by the arm and pulling him out of their reach. She laughed mockingly as the sisters began to fall. Don't worry. Ultear called out, her voice taunting. I won't hurt Naruto too badly. You'd best worry about yourselves though. I don't think Zancro will be so gentle with you. With that, she disappeared into the foliage, her laughter echoing behind her. Mirajane gritted her teeth, her anger boiling over. She turned to see Lisana glowing in the air, her body transforming. Her arms elongated into wings and her legs shifted into stork-like limbs. As the glow subsided, Lisana emerged as a harpy, her wings beating against the air to keep her aloft. Mirajane, in turn, reached inward, drawing upon the power of the demon she housed. Her body began to change, her eyes sharpening as her demonic form took hold. Wide wings burst from her shoulders, and a thick tail sprouted from the base of her spine. With a powerful snap of her wings, she halted her descent, hovering in the air. Mir, what should we do? Lisana asked, her voice tinged with uncertainty. Should I go get help, or fight with you? Mirajane sneered, the demon's influence amplifying her emotions. You honestly think you'd be able to keep up with us? She said coldly. Get out of here and see if you can make yourself useful at the beach. You're not suited for this. The words stung and Lisana's face fell, but she nodded weakly knowing it was the truth. Yeah, it's just like you said, she replied, forcing a sad smile. Well, I'll be off then. Good luck. Mirajane didn't respond. She watched as Lisana darted off toward the beach, her heart aching distantly beneath the demon's influence. She knew she'd regret speaking to her sister like that once she returned to normal, but right now, it didn't matter. Her focus was on Naruto and the woman who had taken him. Turning her gaze to the forest below, Mirajane prepared to dive after Ultear, but a barrage of black fireballs shot past her, forcing her to pull up sharply. Her boiling eyes locked onto Zancro, who stood on the forest floor, his aura radiating malice. Use me to inflict pain on my boyfriend, you reckon? Mirajane snarled, her voice dripping with venom. Best I show you just how much pain I can inflict on you then. Mirajane tipped forward, her wings snapping open as she kicked off the air and dove into the trees below. Following the trajectory of Zancro's flames, she zeroed in on the unfazed mage, her eyes blazing with determination. She held out a hand, a writhing purple energy coalescing around her fingers. With a sharp motion, she pulled the energy into her palm, squeezing it tightly until black light oozed between her fingers. She reared back her arm, her voice sharp and commanding. Explosion punch. Her fist lashed out, slamming into Zancro's raised hand with a deafening boom. The thick energy combusted like gunpowder, engulfing both mages in a massive fireball. Mirajane allowed the concussive force to blow her back, putting distance between herself and Zancro. She glared into the tempest, her eyes narrowing as she assessed the damage. Unfortunately, the fireball began to shrink rapidly as Zancro inhaled deeply, consuming the flames as if they were a bowl of ramen noodles. Mirajane scowled, her lips curling in frustration. "What am I dealing with, a Dragonslayer copycat?" she muttered. "Exactly what I'd expect from a weak guild like Grimoire, no originality." Zancro slurped up the last of the flames, letting out a soft burp before wiping his mouth with the back of his hand. "Don't reduce me to the level of those frail mages," he whispered, his voice low and dangerous. "They have nothing compared to a Godslayer." Mirajane snorted, her laughter sharp and mocking. "Godslayer? What kind of stupid title is that? It's so edgy and cringe." She clasped her hands together by her face, adopting an exaggerated, helpless damsel pose. "Oh no, not the mighty Godslayer. Whatever shall I do?" Her tone shifted abruptly, her sneer returning as she lowered her hands. "Sounds like all your grand power meant nothing against my Naruto, though. So do tell me more about how strong you are." Zancro's only reaction was his eyebrow twitching before he erupted like a volcano. Thick, violent lashes of flame and plasma whipped around him, the heat so intense it forced Mirajane to take a step back. Beads of sweat trickled down her face, but she chuckled, her confidence unshaken. "Looks like he's finally ready to take this seriously." She didn't have to wait long. The mass of flames surged toward her, Zancro at its center. Mirajane wrapped herself in a protective layer of magic, shielding herself from the worst of the heat, and charged forward, diving headlong into the inferno to meet her prey. Instincts not quite her own screamed at her to block, and she obeyed just in time. A burning fist slammed into her forearm, the impact sending a jolt of pain through her body. She gritted her teeth and lashed out with a strike of her own, only to feel it blocked in turn. Grinning, she pressed forward, relying on her senses rather than her eyes to navigate the fiery chaos. The two mages clashed blow for blow, their movements a blur of speed and ferocity. The sound barrier broke repeatedly as their attacks collided, the shock waves reducing the surrounding area to rubble and ash. The ground crumbled beneath their feet, and the air was thick with the harsh smell of burning wood and scorched earth. Mirajane's manic laughter echoed through the battlefield, her taunts cutting through the roar of flames. "You call yourself a dark guild? I'm stacking more darkness in just my tail than all your members combined. Here, let me petition the council to reinstate you as a white guild once we're done. Given what I'm seeing, you'll have no problem getting your position back." But Zancro wasn't responding, he was planning. Mirajane was pushing him back fast, her power was easily a match for his own. Realizing as such, Zancro put as much focus as he could into every strike, every block and every step was calculated. He studied her movements and her patterns to try and find a moment to counterattack. He waited for the perfect instant, biding his time as she grew more confident, more reckless, more convinced of her victory. "Go on, say something. Or is the truth too much for you to handle?" she mocked loudly. "You pussy. Weak, no good, worthless." Her taunts were cut short as Zancro fainted left, then drove a brutal uppercut into her stomach. The impact was devastating, lifting her off her feet and hurling her backward. She crashed into one of the few remaining trees with a bone-jarring thud. Mirajane groaned, her body slumping against the trunk as she frantically patted out the smoldering patch on her abdomen, her protective magic dissipating. Zancro emerged from the flames, his expression cold and merciless. "You talk a lot," he rasped, his voice rough and strained. "More than even I used to. That's saying quite a bit." Mirajane smirked, pulling herself to her feet despite the pain. She raised her fists, her wings flaring behind her. "What's wrong, Zancro baby? My chattering getting annoying? Want me to stop?" "Do what you want," Zancro scoffed, his tone dripping with disdain. "I'll respond when you actually say something worth acknowledging. For now, it's been nothing but vapid slurry. Wipe your mouth, or someone might see the diarrhea dribbling from your filthy lips." Mirajane's eyes narrowed, her growl low and dangerous. "Mind what you say about these lips. They might be soft, but the teeth behind them can bite." Zancro shrugged, his expression indifferent. "Bone or flesh, it matters little in the face of my flames. Each burns just as well to me." Mirajane smirked as she crossed her arms nonchalantly. "Big words for someone who's been on the back foot this whole fight. What's wrong, Zancro? Can't keep up with me?" He didn't respond, his silence only fueling her confidence. She abruptly darted forward, her movements a blur of speed and precision, landing a series of rapid strikes to his chest and arms that forced him to retreat. Each blow was accompanied by a taunt, her laughter ringing out as she pressed her advantage. "Come on, is that all you've got? I thought you were supposed to be some big shot dark mage. Or are you just all talk?" Mirajane chortled as she landed a heavy blow to his face. "I've drunk piss stronger than you." Despite the attacks, Zancro's expression remained stoic, his movements deliberate as he parried and blocked her assault. Mirajane, however, mistook his silence for weakness. "You're not even trying anymore," she jeered, her voice dripping with mockery. "What's the matter? Did I break your spirit already? She lunged at him again, her fist aimed squarely at his face. Pathetic. But this time, Zancro didn't block. Instead, he sidestepped at the last second, letting her momentum carry her past him. Mirajane stumbled, caught off guard by the sudden shift in his strategy. Before she could recover, Zancro stamped his foot and a firestorm erupted from beneath her. The flames roared to life, engulfing her in a searing inferno. Mirajane screeched in pain, her wings beating furiously as she struggled to free herself from the blaze. She rocketed out of the tower of flames, her body smoking and her protective magic flickering weakly as she tried to shield herself. Her vision blurred, and she barely had time to register Zancro's merciless glare before his fist connected with her nose. The impact sent a sickening crack through the air, and Mirajane cried out as something in her face gave way. Her vision swam and she stumbled backward, but Zancro didn't give her a chance to recover. His large hands wrapped around her wrists, igniting in black flame. The searing pain stole her breath, leaving her unable to scream as his other fist began slamming into her face. I must thank you for all your babbling, the horrible man whispered as he turned the girl into a punching bag. You definitely had the edge on me. If you hadn't let your guard down, you'd have ended up winning. Spinning her around, he slammed the girl into the ground like a rolled-up carpet. Her pupils dilated in pain as all the air was forced from her lungs in a ragged cry. Her lunch was next to be forcibly ejected as Zancro dropped his knee into her stomach. You will serve your purpose of hurting Naruto for me. Mirajane weakly grasped at the mage, struggling to say anything but not having the air to do so. His merciless eyes glared down at her in contempt. Then, you will die. Zancro's parting words were the last thing she heard before his heel crunched into her face, and she knew no more. XXXXXXX. The cold trickle of water over Naruto's head roused him from unconsciousness. He groaned, the throbbing ache at the base of his skull, making it hard to focus. Wincing, he forced himself awake as quickly as possible, his shinobi training screaming at him to assess the situation. When he opened his eyes, the first thing he saw was a pair of long, shapely legs clad in thigh-high white boots. Ugh. Ultear. Naruto muttered, his voice hoarse. What are you doing? The woman giggled, stepping back with a condescending smirk. Oh my, what a role reversal this is. I'm pleased you haven't forgotten what my legs look like. Naruto struggled to come up with a retort, his brain still foggy from the blow. He winced as he tried to sit up, only to realize his arms were securely bound to the tree behind him. Oh my, I really did a number on you, Ultear said, her tone almost playful. She squatted down in front of him, reaching out to gently stroke his hair. Naruto grimaced and pulled away, earning a laugh from her. Standing back up, she stepped aside, giving him a clear view of her. Well, my boy, I would have hoped we'd meet again under different circumstances, but alas, it's ended up like this. I trust you understand why. Naruto shook his head slowly, trying to clear the last of the cobwebs. He looked at her, confusion etched across his face. I really don't understand anything. Why are you attacking me like this? Why is your guild attacking the island? What's in this for you? Hades might be a prick, but he's way smarter than just picking a fight with us for the hell of it. Ultear giggled again, holding a hand to her mouth as if scandalized. Oh, one question at a time. You might fluster a lady like that. She raised a finger, her smirk returning. I'm not going to give you all the answers, but I'll humor you with a few. She paused, her expression turning sly. You're right in saying Master Hades wouldn't attack unless there was something he really had to gain from it. The attack wasn't against you or Fairy Tail per se, rather, you were simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. We might have asked you to let us collect our prize and be on our way, but we know how that would have turned out. Besides, it's more fun like this. Wouldn't you agree? Naruto tugged experimentally at his bonds, testing their strength. Finding them secure, he grunted in displeasure. Fun for who, you? I'm really not having much fun, and if the rest of the guild is dealing with your lot the same way, then neither are they. He then paused. Except maybe Natsu. He allowed. Or Gajiel. They're weird like that. Ultear chuckled, her crystal ball dancing over her arms as she spoke. There's always a couple of odd mages like that in every guild. Zancro was like that for us. That is, until you nearly killed him and turned his life into a living hell. You burned him so badly even his throat is scarred over, the man can hardly speak anymore. Naruto snorted, his expression hardening. Serves him right. He came at me with the intent to kill, so I matched him. He's lucky he got away with it as well as he did. Ultear raised an eyebrow, her gaze considering as she studied him. Do you really mean that? Seems a bit harsh for you. Naruto shrugged, his tone matter of fact. Do I regret these things? Sure. I don't actually like hurting people, unlike some guilds, he added pointedly, staring directly at her. But if that's what's needed to save myself or those close to me, then that's what I'll do. True, the raven-haired maid allowed, her smirk softening into something more contemplative. She leaned in slightly, her voice taking on a teasing yet probing tone. Would you count me as one of your precious people, then? You did chase me all the way back to Grimmerheart to try and save me. Naruto blinked, caught off guard by the sudden shift in the conversation. Yes, I suppose I would, he said hesitantly. You've helped me in the past, even if you were doing it for selfish reasons. I've seen private sides of you. Sides I don't think you meant to let slip. So, yeah, I know there's still a good side to you under all. He motioned with his nose toward her current demeanor, all this. For a moment, Ultear's expression softened, her smirk fading into something almost genuine. She dropped into a squat in front of him, her eyes searching his. You know, that's actually quite nice to hear, she said, her voice quieter now. I'm pleased to know that next time around, there might be more to us than what we are now. Naruto stared at her, his confusion deepening. What we are now? He echoed. What are you talking about? You're being so cryptic. Can you please stop talking in riddles? Ultear chuckled, her playful disposition returning. But how I love playing games with you. You were one of the most genuinely kind people I ever got to know. I wouldn't be seeing this version of you again afterward, as our goal is very nearly in sight. So, please, humor me for a moment longer. Naruto's exasperation boiled over. Won't be seeing me again? What goal? What is wrong with you? He cried out, his voice tinged with frustration. Ultear's laughter was light, almost musical, as she reached out to pat his head. Oh, come now, dear. Use that brain of yours, she teased. What on earth would convince Master Hades to bring the entirety of our guild here, swooping into the middle of your cute little S-rank test, and throwing you all into chaos? Surely you know enough about us by now to work that out. Naruto stared at her, his brow furrowed in confusion. I guess, maybe I would. I don't know. He admitted, his tone uncertain. Ultear smirked, her eyes gleaming with amusement. Come on, give it a try, she urged. Naruto hesitated, his mind racing as he tried to piece together the puzzle. Ultear confirmed Hades is here on an actual mission to grab something, he thought. I know they want to resurrect Seraph eventually, though I wouldn't know how. It could have been the keys, but Gilderts threw them to the other side of the world, didn't he? Finally, he looked up at Ultear. You're not going to find any of Seraph's keys here, you know. Ultear tittered, her eyes sparkling with mischief. No, but your thinking is close to the mark. Naruto frowned, his thoughts churning. What else, then? If the keys wouldn't work, what else is here they could use? He racked his brain, running through different possibilities until he remembered just how potent the energy around this island was. His eyes widened as a realization struck him. Surely you're not after the island itself, are you? Ultear laughed out loud, rolling her eyes in mock exasperation. Oh, Naruto, how could we possibly steal a whole island? Grumbling, Naruto shot back, I dunno, the same way you rebuilt a freaking mountain. I suppose that's fair, Ultear mused, her smirk returning. We do have some rather powerful mages in our ranks. She leaned in closer, her eyes glinting with anticipation. I'll give you a hint. We're looking for someone, not something. Someone? Naruto echoed, his mind racing. Who would actually drive you people to? His eyes widened as the pieces finally clicked into place. Ultear's smile grew as she watched the realization dawn on him. Yes, go on. Who could it be? Naruto shook his head in disbelief. You can't be serious. He'd be over 400 years old. He's dead. Apparently not, my beautiful man, Ultear said, her smirk widening. Somewhere on this island is Seraph, and we are here to take him with us. So that's why all those grunts are running around. Naruto exclaimed, his voice filled with disbelief. You're just distracting us from your true operation. Ultear smiled smugly and tapped Naruto's nose. A wave of conflicting emotions washed over Naruto's face as he pieced everything together. But there was one part he couldn't quite understand. So why tell me this? He asked, his voice tinged with suspicion. What does that benefit you? It makes no sense. For the second time, Ultear's gaze softened as she stared into Naruto's eyes, her usual smirk replaced by something slightly more vulnerable. Well, if you really must know, she began, her voice quieter now, I suppose this is a type of goodbye. The goodbye? Naruto echoed, his confusion deepening. Ultear nodded, her expression uncharacteristically tender. She lifted a hand to his cheek, her touch surprisingly gentle. When Seraph rewinds time for me, this version of us will cease to exist. You were so kind to me in those few moments we spent together that I feel like I owe you this at least. I'll get my chance to try everything again. I'll have my family back. I won't be dragged off and tortured. I won't need to join any dark guild. She brought her other hand up to cup his face, her eyes searching his. I'll meet you on the same side of the law, and we'll be able to try our hand at a different kind of relationship. Naruto paused, the strange statement twisting around in his mind. A different relationship. Ultear smiled softly and leaned in, her lips meeting his in a warm, lingering kiss. His brain short-circuited, his thoughts scattering as he froze in place. When she finally pulled away, he gaped at her, his mind utterly blank. No words came to him, just a jumble of emotions and questions he couldn't articulate. Ultear let him go with a satisfied sigh, pushed herself to her feet and placed her hands on her hips. Hopefully that's enough to get through your thick skull. What I mean, she said, her smirk returning, though it lacked its usual edge. Ultear, what? I mean. Naruto stuttered, his voice trailing off as he struggled to process what had just happened. Well, on that note, she cut him off, ignoring his stammering entirely. I must away. Zeref won't find himself, and time's wasting. She giggled to herself, clearly amused by her own joke. Time's wasting, oh my. I'll have nothing but time soon. The sound of heavy rustling off to their right caught her attention, and Ultear raised an eyebrow, her expression shifting back to his usual playful confidence. Goodbye, Naruto, she said, her voice soft but firm. I'll see you in my next life. With that, she turned and walked away, her crystal ball materializing beneath her as she floated off into the distance. Naruto could only watch, his mind still reeling as she disappeared into the trees, leaving him alone with his thoughts and the lingering warmth of her kiss. Vile woman, playing her filthy games. Naruto blinked, his mind still reeling from Ultear's departure, and turned toward the voice. Huh? He asked dumbly. Zancro pushed through the shrubbery, his torso visible through the leaves. His scarred face was twisted into a sneer. Ultear, that witch loves to mess with people's heads. She's done something like that to you? Naruto asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. The mage snorted. If she tried, I'd kill her. Now, back to business. Naruto's danger senses screamed at him, and he instinctively prepared himself for senjutsu, his body tensing as he focused his chakra. Zancro said, his voice dripping with malice. Best you don't do that if you don't want anything else to happen to your pretty little girlfriend. Naruto froze, his eyes snapping to meet Zancro's. What did you do? He demanded, his voice low and dangerous. Zancro's face twisted into a perverse grin, his eyes gleaming with sadistic pleasure. I want to hurt you, but not just physically, he said, his voice rasping painfully but filled with venom. I want you to hurt and suffer and scream curses at me. He stepped forward, dragging something behind him. Then, I want you to die cursing your parents for giving birth to you. As Zancro pushed through the leaves, he revealed a leg clamped tightly in his hand. Naruto's heart sank as he recognized that foot. A thump of rage pulsed in his head, his fists clenching despite his bonds. I want you to lose who you are, to forget everything you stand for, Zancro continued, his voice rising with each word. I want you to fall apart into nothingness and then die a miserable husk of yourself. With a brutal yank, Zancro dragged Mirajane out from the bushes to suspend her body above the ground, her unconscious and battered form dangling limply in his grip. Take a good look at this woman, he snarled, and know the man you hate did this to her. Mirajane's condition was horrifying. Her feet and hands were raw, bubbling flesh from third-degree burns. Her body was covered in bruises and lacerations, the result of being dragged across rocks and rubble. Her frail leg awkwardly splayed down towards the ground, her dress having bunched up around her arms to exposing her underwear in a way that stripped her of her dignity. But the worst part was her face. Her eyes were swollen shut, and there wasn't an unblemished patch of skin anywhere. Worse, her nose twisted at an unnatural angle, marring her beautiful complexion. It was a blessing she was unconscious. The pain she would have endured otherwise would have been unimaginable. Another thump of rage pounded inside Naruto's skull as Zancro chuckled cruelly. Yes, there we go. Hate me. Curse me, then die. With a careless motion, Zancro dropped Mirajane to the ground, her body hitting the dirt with a sickening thud. He threw his scarred hands out, his voice rising to a scream. Burn in hell. A deep ominous groan echoed through the air as a compressed ball of flame swirled into existence before him. In an instant, it exploded outward, a torrent of fire engulfing Naruto completely. The heat was unbearable, the flames consuming everything in their path. Zancro laughed maniacally, his voice cracking with glee. How's that, maggot? Finally, you get what's coming to you. Enjoy your journey to the other side as charcoal. XXXXXXX. Deep within the inferno, Naruto felt his skin blistering and peeling away, the searing heat consuming him. But the physical pain was distant, secondary to the fire raging in his mind. Only one thought burned brighter than the flames. He was going to kill Zancro. The ethereal glow of the fire seemed to penetrate even the depths of his subconscious, reaching the dark cavernous lair of the Kyuubi. Naruto stood before the massive fox, his eyes blazing with a rage so intense it could melt glass. His hand shot up and without hesitation, he began drawing vibrant, twisting golden energy through the seal. "Sorry, Kyuubi," Naruto said, his voice low and resolute. "I'll be using some of your power for this one. He needs to suffer and I need to endure his flames." The Kyuubi's eyes narrowed, a malicious glee flickering in their crimson depths. "So be it," the beast rumbled, its voice echoing through the chamber. "Show me what sort of destruction you can bring using my power." XXXXXXX. Zancro was determined to leave nothing behind, not even ash. He poured every ounce of his magic into the flames, his vast reservoirs of power fueling the inferno to make it hotter, fiercer, and more destructive. A wide, manic grin stretched across his face as he screamed, "You don't understand the humiliation of being confined to a hospital bed by your own flames." His eyes flicked to the melted, scarred skin on his arms and chest, permanent reminders of his shameful defeat at Naruto's hands. "You took my beauty," he snarled, his voice ragged and broken. "You took my hair. You even took my voice." He coughed violently, spitting a wad of blood onto the ground as his ruined vocal cords ruptured, but his grin never wavered. "But you gave me so much in return. A desire to improve. A plan to break you. And a thirst for revenge like I've never known." The deluge of flame roaring from his hands intensified, the grass and trees around the attack, igniting from the sheer heat. Even Mirajane's limp form wasn't spared, her skin turning red and blistering under the onslaught. Zancro didn't care. His wild, bloodshot eyes were locked on the fiery maelstrom, his focus entirely on the obliteration of his hated foe. But then, from within the heart of the inferno, an animalistic howl of pure rage cut through the thunderous roar of the flames. Zancro gritted his teeth, his scowl deepening as he poured even more of his magic into the attack. "Even if it kills me," he thought, his mind consumed by vengeance, "I will have my revenge." Despite the overwhelming intensity of the flames, a naked figure suddenly burst through the fire. Zancro barely had time to utter a stunned "what?" before a fist weighing as much as a mountain slammed into his face. The impact sent Zancro rocketing through the air like a cannonball, his body crashing into the distant mountainside with a deafening boom. Naruto, however, didn't spare a glance for his enemy. His focus was entirely on Mirajane, her broken form lying motionless on the ground. He knelt beside her, his hands hovering over her body as his mind raced. "What do I do? What do I do? What do I do?" Tears pulled at the corners of his eyes as he struggled to think of a solution. If only Tsunade Ba-chan were here, he thought desperately. She could fix her. If only I knew even one healing technique. His thoughts spiraled until, suddenly, a memory flashed in his mind. Wendy, the little dragon slayer with healing magic. She had healed him after he was hit with Grimoire Heart's Jupiter cannon. She could save Mirajane. Without hesitation, Naruto created a shadow clone which appeared in a puff of smoke. The clone gently scooped Mirajane into its arms, cradling her as carefully as possible. Then, with a burst of chakra, it shot into the sky, racing away to find Wendy. With Mirajane's safety entrusted to his clone, Naruto turned his gaze toward the distant fissure in the mountainside where Zancro had landed. Anger. Searing anger overtook his mind. The cold, calculated, controlled, burning anger. Untainted by the Kyuubi, this rage was all his own. All his life, Naruto had craved precious people to call his own. For this enemy to dare touch his most precious person. His teeth sharpened and his nails elongating into claws as an animalistic urge to attack on all fours overtook him. Crouching low, he felt the surge of power as 1, 2, then 3 golden, bubbling tails sprouted from his backside. An unholy growl rumbled from his throat, deep and primal. Zancro wanted him to hate him. Congratulations, Naruto now hated him more than any other living person. Time for him to reap the seed sown. The ground cracked as Naruto kicked off and rocketed towards Zancro. XXXXXXX. Ugh. Pulling himself from the rock face, Zancro shook the stars out of his vision. There had always been a piece of his mind ready for if the blonde menace had managed to escape, but nothing had prepared him for this. He'd only just extracted his leg when a distant boom reached his ears. A fraction of a second later, blood, spit and air was blown out of his body, as something impacted him with the force of a comet. Blasting deep into the rock behind him, stone and flint tore at his scarred back as the force pushed him further. Igniting himself, the mage pushed back against the residual power of the blow, and pulled himself to a stop. He grit his teeth in the darkness of the cave, his body carved into the stone, viscous, dripping blood seeping from his teeth. In the distance at the cave entrance, a luminous figure stood, body wrapped in a violent gold ore, their eyes positively glowing in the dark. Scowling, the mage coughed out, "I don't know how you survived that attack, but it won't be." The figure vanished, then reappeared with its arm outstretched, fist buried up to its forearm in Zancro's stomach. The hit was so fast. so violent that the mage did not even have time to register the pain before claws sunk into the flesh of his stomach and hurled him back down the tunnel. He was a ragdoll before this blistering fury. Exploding from the hole in the stone, Zancro distantly remembered the last time he'd been hit this hard was when he versed Master Hades. Clenching up as much as possible, the mage righted himself in the air and waited for the ground's impact. Slamming into the earth, he skidded back several dozen meters as he pulled himself to a stop. Blood dripped from his teeth in concerning amounts, indicating dangerous levels of internal bleeding. Shaking hands came up to inspect the wounds on his stomach, but one look at them told him he didn't want to know the full extent of the damage. Gritting his teeth in a mix of agony and fury, Zancro cursed the man. What the hell was that? Where did all that power come from? A shockwave hit him as the burning gold figure suddenly materialized before him. His eyes widened as he took in the sight. It was Naruto alright, but he was also very, very different. Zancro's former attack had vaporized all his clothes, so the teen was stood there naked, hunched almost how a werewolf would stand. Not a single mark remained on his body of all the efforts Zancro poured into his attack. If anything, he looked bigger, more muscular, more feral. His hair was a spiked mess, floating within the golden aura that surrounded him. His nails had sharpened into claws which flexed as his fists clenched and unclenched. His eyes were now slitted, lined black and animalistic, glowing with an otherworldly intensity as they locked onto Zancro. Overly sharp teeth poked out from almost black lips, and behind him, 3 translucent writhing tails twisted and coiled like living things. What the hell is this? Spluttered the mage. Where'd all this come from? The fist suddenly found itself balled around Zancro's neck, the actual movement too fast for him to track. Naruto's voice, deep, guttural, and totally out of place on the blonde growled out, "You wanted me to hate you? Well, good job, I do. I hate you. For what you put Mirajane through, my most precious person. You don't get just me though. You get a demon. It's time you learned how outclassed you are and how bad you mucked up." Sudden waves of killing intent from Naruto smashed into Zancro with the force of a sledgehammer, and for the first time, the mage truly understood the danger he was in. Gripping the arm around his throat, he choked out, "Well, if I die, then you die with me." An inferno then burst forth from the man as he poured every drop of magic he had left into it. It burned hotter, brighter and fiercer than anything he'd ever produced before. He cackled madly, even as his own flesh began to redden and sweat under the heat. He clung to Naruto's arm, desperate to ensure the blonde suffered alongside him. But as the firestorm raged, something strange registered in the back of Zancro's mind. His hands hurt, not from the heat of his own flames, but as if they were being burned from the outside in. What? This is not possible. The mage screamed in his mind, confusion running rampant through his thoughts. The arm holding him suddenly pressed down on him and crushed him into the floor, legs folding awkwardly under the pressure. The weight of a house crushed his throat, and he struggled to gasp, let alone try and shriek. Abruptly, his attack cut off as he scrambled to breathe, hands ineffectually clawing at the squeezing fingers around his trachea. Wild, tearing eyes looked down at the arm, and he suddenly realized it was no longer flesh holding him. Pure, thick golden energy had replaced the skin of the boy, and Zancro realized there were now 5 far more tangible tails whipping around behind Naruto. Wide, pupilless eyes glared down into his soul, Naruto's now featureless face consisting only of them and a white mouth full of jagged teeth. 2 long ears now poked up from the top of the teen's head, emanating from the beginnings of a fox's skull that had grown over his features. The sheer power that coursed through the being before him made the mage kick in fear, keenly aware of the way it corroded through his flesh. Gaggling and spluttering, he watched with wide eyes as the demigod leaned down so close their faces almost touched. "It's your turn to burn." Brilliant golden energy exploded from the teen, engulfing Zancro in a shroud of corrosive light. The mage's screams were strangled by the hand around his throat as the energy consumed him. It didn't burn like a fire, it burned like acid. His body peeled apart, strip by strip, the energy dissolving his skin and muscle in agonizing layers. Naruto stared into Zancro's frantic white eyes as the mage writhed in agony, his body dissolving under the corrosive golden energy. Despite the chaos, Naruto's mind remained clear. Revenge was warranted, but he knew Zancro's fate shouldn't be decided by him alone. Mirajane deserved the final say on what happens to this despicable man. This was her justice to deliver, not his. Releasing his grip, Naruto stood over the convulsing mage, his golden aura flickering like a dying flame. Zancro's pain-ridden eyes glared up at him, filled with a mix of hatred and desperation. What's wrong? He spluttered, convulsing as seizures of agony racked his body. "Lose your nerve. Kill me already." Naruto's golden fists clenched, his expression cold and resolute. "If it were up to me, you'd already be dead," he said, his voice low and steady. "But this isn't my call. you answer to Mirajane. She'll decide your fate. Before Zancro could respond, Naruto's fist came down like a hammer, striking square in the middle of the mage's nose. The bone and cartilage collapsed with a sickening crunch, and Zancro's head slammed back into the ground. His eyes rolled back and his body went limp, free for the moment from the torment of his burns. Clenching up, Naruto reared back in all his golden glory and roared. The dominating howl of an alpha predator rung around the island several times, disrupting even the most intense of fights for a moment as they looked around for the source. Holding the eerie cry for a few moments longer, Naruto finally relaxed, his vengeance wrought, and his anger abated. Slowly, the tails of the Kyuubi absorbed back into his body, the golden energy receding until he was once again the blonde human Naruto. Sweat poured from his brow, and Naruto flexed his hands. Turning them over to inspect them, he was thrilled to realize his skin hadn't peeled off in strips either. He hadn't been looking forward to that part. The ether nano in the fox's power was proving to be really useful. Well, I'll be. To his everlasting surprise, he also saw Levi's ring was still intact, wrapped around his finger and shining like nothing had even happened. That was a thought for another time, though, as the blonde needed to find Mirajane. And some clothes. Good thing I left my scroll at our hammock from when we first got here. Turning his gaze back to the fallen mage, Naruto's face twisted into a look of pure disgust. Without a word, he bent down and grabbed one of Zancro's legs, hoisting the unconscious man up with little regard for his condition. "You're coming with me," Naruto muttered, his voice cold. "Same way Mira came with you." Asserting his location from the position of the sun, Naruto spun on his heels and dashed off into the scrub toward the old base camp, dragging Zancro behind him. The mage's body bounced and scraped mercilessly along the rough terrain, Naruto showing him as much care as Zancro had shown Mirajane moments earlier. Each bump and drag was a silent reminder of the pain Zancro had inflicted, and Naruto didn't spare a single thought for the mage's comfort. Justice, in this moment, was as rough and unyielding as the ground beneath them. XXXXXXX. Omake. Naruto bounced outside the council chambers. He'd been instructed to sit while the guide Toad went in to let the council members know of his results. His eagerness didn't allow for more than a few seconds of motionlessness before he jumped to his feet and pressed his ear up against the door. Distantly, he'd heard some muffled shouting that sounded rather disbelieving, some group discussion, more muffled shouting, and prevailing throughout it all, the calm, even tone of the Toad. After a while it had grown silent and the teen got bored, so started exploring the room. There wasn't a whole lot in there, just some potted trees, a few seats for the guests, and a water cooler to help himself to. Still, those trees were looking very climbable, so when the Toad finally emerged from the council chambers, it had to look around a few moments before spotting the blonde pest perched in one of the small branches. Mr. Naruto, what are you doing?" Rocking backward and forward, the potted tree came dangerously close to toppling over as Naruto replied, "Well, I got bored, so I climbed this. I used to climb trees a heap when I was in training, and since there's literally nothing to do in here, I decided I'd see if I could climb this one." Exhaling slowly through its nose, the Toad didn't even blink. "If you would follow me then please, the council have come to their decision." Letting the tree tip forward precariously, Naruto stepped off easily as the plant then rocked back up into position, equilibrium restored. He stuffed his hands in his pockets as the Toad led him before the magic council, whistling a merry tune all the while. "Would you Jesus?" Heeding the irritated command from one of the councilmen, Naruto cut off mid-chirp and quipped back, "So you got my badge ready for me." The entire ensemble seemed to wither at his words, body posture screaming displeasure at the results. Naruto simply ignored them and held a hand out. "Come on, badge your results first, I don't particularly mind." With the deepest of reluctant breaths, Grand Doma pulled himself to his feet and looked about his colleagues. They all refused to look at him, arms crossed and faces turned petulantly. "Looks like I'm in this one by myself. I'm surrounded by a pack of sooks." "Naruto." His booming voice cut through the air, the teen snapping to attention. "Your guide Toad has indicated that in pretty well every test we offered you, you either set a new record or came very close to doing so. At his recommendation. The tests were cut short due to you having reached a satisfactory result." Naruto's grin was so smug it could have powered a small city. He looked like he just won the lottery, a free lifetime supply of ramen, and a date with the Hokage monument all at once. Wincing like this was causing him physical pain, Grand Doma continued, "Due to the official results, and at the recommendation of your Toad, we the council hereby declare," there were several muffled groans from the council members, "that as of today, Naruto Uzumaki shall be recognized as an official member of the 10 Saints, and will as such be declared a Saint-tier mage." Whooping in delight, Naruto kicked into the air and punched high in victory, as several lackluster claps sounded out from a few individuals. "Damn right, Dadabayo." I'm a Saint tier ninja now, and I cannot wait to rub this in Natsu's face. The disgruntled voice from one of the mages reached him. Excellent. Great job. Now, please leave so we can continue with our work. Sure thing, oh stuffy ones, declared Naruto as he gave them a sloppy salute. It was getting kinda musky in here anyway, so I'm ready for some fresh air. I believe a victory ramen is in order. Catch you guys later. He then charged out the door in a rush of excitement and energy, leaving most of the council members feeling like the wind had been sucked from their lungs. Silence reigned heavy over them all until one of them piped up, "Let's send him on the next 100-year mission that comes across our books." The chorus of agreement met the suggestion, and they all began to pray as one that the next such mission wasn't far away. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed it. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below and turn on the bell notification. And also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.